Ho, bonjour in Denoy Maganadok, Anin. On Sunday night, uh, Ingi Wikon Gamen, we did a ceremonial feast. There was a pipe ceremony that I brought my pipe to, and we fed our items. We have the Opwagan is an animate being in the language. The Dewa Igun, the drum, is an animate being. The Miigwinuk are animate beings, and we also have spirits that we are named after and our clans. So we got together and we had a ceremonial feast that we try to do before winter and before summer. So in the spring and in the fall, we'll have a ceremonial feast. And that was absolutely lovely. And at every one of these feasts, these four medicines will be there. Yesterday, I was reading my book, The Seven Generations and the Seven Grandfather Teachings. I'm recording an audio book, and one of the chapters I was reading in Giizhik in the Great Law, the Sacred Law, the Seven Grandfather Teachings. I spoke about each one of these medicines, and I was fascinated by that. I'm like, okay, I'm going to speak about that this afternoon. So I've assembled the medicines here. Let's see here if I can. Got this, and this was a lovely bouquet I received as a gift when I was speaking in in Michigan. Someone brought me a bouquet with all of these medicines in it. You can probably see the Giizhik, the Cedar, the Mashkodewashk or Bashkodejiibik, the sage, the Wiingashk, the sweetgrass, and here is Asemaa. This is a tobacco tie. And I thought this was just the most lovely gift, and what a perfect way to have all of the medicines together. But I also have my onagan here, my birch bark dish that also has the medicines in it. And I suppose we'll start with this one. This has a couple of different names. This could be Mashkodewashk, or it could be Bashkodejiibik. So both of those, that Mashkode and Bashkode, this is referring to the plains. And the washk, it's a grass-like plant. And the jiibik is a root. So Mashkodewashk would be like a plant that grows on the plains. Bashkodejiibik would be almost like a smoky plant or a smoky root, or a root that grows on the plains. Sage. And this is a particular kind. This is not the white sage. I don't believe is indigenous to Minnesota or to the woodlands, but this is the sage that I use in my ceremonies. And when you burn it, I suppose the other name we could use for these medicines is the Nukwezigan. The Nukwezigan. And that comes from the word Nukwezige. And that is to burn a medicine, a plant for a medicinal purpose. It's to smudge. Nukwezige. So if you're smudging or someone is sponging, you could describe that as Nukwezige. He or she is burning a plant for a medicinal purpose. And this one has a very unique, a very distinctive smell when it is burnt. When you smudge with it, I find it, again, to be very medicinal and very strong. And it's a pity that sometimes, because it's probably not a common scent for a lot of European Americans or Euro-Canadians, that they'll mistake it for cannabis. And, for me, this smells nothing at all like cannabis. But again, it does have a very distinctive smell. And when this is burned, when this is smudged, it really, for many people who have shared this teaching with me, purifies the environment that we're in. It pushes out a lot of negative energy. And again, that smell, and as the smoke kind of envelops you and envelops the room, you've changed. You're in a new environment. You're preparing to do something that is you're preparing to pray. You're preparing to relate to your relatives in a good way. So often it will be like this. This is a pinch of sage that you can set into your shell, maybe a stone, and then you'll use that. This is one that is very dear to me because it is a medicine that I use on a daily basis. This is Wiingashk. This is sweetgrass. And again, there's that ushk ending, Wiingashk. It is, and that's pretty literal translation for sweetgrass, but this too is a braid of long grass that has a very distinct smell. And here's something I think is fascinating. So many of you will probably recognize the smell of sweetgrass if you have had a chance to maybe be in northern Minnesota by lakes in the summer. There is an almost vanilla-like fragrance wafting by the lakes. It is that particular smell for me. It is home. It is one of the most delightful smells and environments I've been in. And I use this, again, I smudge with sweetgrass pretty much every night before I go to bed. When my son was born, I really wanted to be present. I really wanted to be aware. And also, when I was offering tobacco every night, there was this sense of reassurance that at least someone in the world was praying for this baby, was praying for all of, in my case, his relatives, all of our relatives. And so before I smudge, before I set down my tobacco, my Asemaa, I smudge. And when I use Wiingashk, again, it has a very wonderful scent when it's burned. And for me, it's drawing all of that as positive and good to me. I heard this comment by Ozawa Bakobenesi, the late Norval Morrisseau. He's a famous woodlands artist. And for him, when he burned sweetgrass, he explained in an interview that, we Native people use this for a sacred purpose. When we burn sweetgrass, we're cleansing ourselves, and we are, setting aside that ego so that spirit can speak through us. And for me, I thought that is like the very best way to begin a binda kujigewen, a semakewen, to begin a tobacco offering, to begin a prayer. So I love using Wiingashk for that purpose. And since I just mentioned a tobacco offering, here's our next Nukwezigun, our next sacred medicine. And I have two examples of that here. It'd be Asemaa. It would be tobacco. This is a tobacco tie. So this is a small pinch of tobacco that has been put in cloth, in red cloth. It's been tied up, and this was given to me. This was offered to me when I was speaking. And, tobacco, it's such a vast topic. Tobacco could literally be a dissertation on Anishinaabe Ojibwe, on Ojibwe culture, because tobacco accompanies us from cradle to grave. This is the medicine that we use when we are making an offering, when we are praying, when we are asking for help, when we are acknowledging thanksgiving, showing gratitude before any huge enterprise, before any cultural activity, even if we are making relations with different nations. Asemaa leads the way. Tobacco leads the way. In that way, prayer or being in a meditative, contemplative state leads the way. And this is what they use when they are entering that state, the Asemaa. So in this case, this is nice because it's been wrapped up. In the old days, even if you were given like a pinch or a handful of Asemaa, that would be something you would use in Giizhik, in your opwagan, in your pipe. And the opwagan, it's one of our most sacred medicines. It's one of our most sacred gifts. Maybe I'll read this from my book, The 7 Generations and the 7 Grandfather Teachings. This was the other thing that when I was like, what shall I speak about today? Well, I'll speak about the medicines. The wood-like article referred in this word is the okich, the pipe stem, a part of the opwagan, the sacred pipe. Our ancestors included this word in the name Giizhik, the sacred law, the great law, to imply that Giizhik is something that has been meditated upon with the opwagan, one of our most treasured gifts. The opwagan is used in prayer, to give thanks, to ask for help, to make agreements with other nations, and to seek peace within ourselves. The 4 sacred medicines, Asemaa, tobacco, Bashkodejiibik or Mashkodewashk, sage, Wiingashk, sweetgrass, and Giizhik, cedar, are used. And so this is Asemaa. This is what a Nicotiana rustica, old-time tobacco, looks like. This was also a gift to me. This was what we originally planted and harvested for tobacco, but it's very strong. And it has nicotine in it. I, for the past 12 years, have been nicotine-free. I was an inveterate smoker for well over 2 decades. I had a heck of a time quitting cigarettes. And when I did, and I still treasure being able to quit cigarettes as a sacred gift, as it has been one of the most wonderful things that has ever happened to me. I guard and look after being nicotine free with great care. I don't even have a little bit. So how do I use Indupwagan? How do I use my pipe when I'm doing a pipe ceremony? And what I use is right here. And maybe it would be better for me to hold it up here. This is a Pakkozigan, Mashkodewashk, or Mashkodewashk. This is red willow, or Mittigo Asemaa, or wood tobacco. So this was originally part of red willow. It is dogwood in some other dialects. Mashkodewashk in one way of saying it in Ojibwe, Mashkodewashk in another. And again, it's a red plant. You'll see it growing along the ditches in along the highway here in the woodlands. And what you do is you harvest it and you take off the red part of the bark and you're trying to get the inner cambium. And that is what I have dried here. And this is what I use in Dupwagan in my pipe because it's nicotine free. This is originally the arrival of tobacco, the arrival of Asemaa. This is what our trickster, Wenabosho, Nanabush, Nanabuju gave to us. And when, it had this distinctive look, he said, this is what the people who are coming will use for tobacco. And so I feel like if you choose to use nicotine tobacco, that's your prerogative. I use nicotine tobacco when I am setting down tobacco, when I'm using a pinch and setting it down. But when I use it in my pipe, I use the very old school Mittigo Asemaa, Apakkozigan, Mashkodewashk, red willow. And tobacco, again, it accompanies us from cradle to grave for many people on a daily basis. I was having a cup of coffee, and even on my mug here, I hope it comes through, it's Braids Tobacco, Ancestors and Ceremony from this lovely Benesi mug, this Thunderbird mug. And we use tobacco, again, before any cultural undertaking, before it accompanies all of our ceremonies, even when we're making relationships with different nations. So, for example, before you harvested a medicine, you would address the medicine, you would speak to the medicine, and then you would set down tobacco as an offering. And again, this isn't a trade, this is an acknowledgement of relationship. Before you harvested wild rice, before you harvested maple syrup, maple sap to create maple syrup and maple sugar, you would set down tobacco. If you were at somewhere magnificent, somewhere considered spiritual, you would set down tobacco. Before you got in the water, Asemaa, they would offer tobacco, especially after you had hunted or trapped and you were able to harvest an animal or a fish. Asemaa, tobacco would be set down. And it's not an exchange, it's an acknowledgement of relationship. And for us, as we say, cradle to grave, it is when we're doing all of those things, as we're leading our lives, before we receive our Anishinaabe Winzo in our Indian name, Asemaa is present when we're children, when we're babies, as we grow up, and then as we go to the next world. With the funerary rites, Asemaa is present. So this is an incredibly important medicine. It has a great deal of spiritual significance to Anishinaabe, Ojibwe people. And to share that with you all. And that we also have nicotine-free ways of using Asemaa. So, and the next medicine I'll speak about, it's by no means the least or the last, but is Giizhik. Giizhik. This is cedar. And you know where I said I used Wiingashk, sweetgrass, on a daily basis. Before I used Wiingashk all the time, I used Giizhik to smudge with. Again, it has a very lovely medicinal smell when it's burned. And it does not just have to be smudged. It doesn't just have to be burned. Sometimes cedar will be laid down during a ceremony and you can set things on it. Some people will put cedar in their makazinan. That's our Ojibwe word for moccasin when they're traveling to new places. Others will hang up a Giizhik conduct. And that's what this is. Giizhik is the tree. It's cedar. It's a cedar tree. It's the medicine, but Giizhik conduct, it's the cedar bough. And some people will hang a Giizhik conduct, a cedar bough, above their doors or above their windows so that the cedar can draw in and will assume any of the negative energy that could possibly come through a window or a door. And so you'll note that it begins green, and if it's been hanging above your door, above your window, when it becomes brown, they'll say it's doing its job. That cedar will be burned, and then maybe another Giizhik conduct, maybe another cedar bough will be hung up in its place. But I love this smell. It is indeed a medicine. It can be used to make a very delicious, nutritious and healthy tea. Anibishabu, leaf liquid tea. And so I use that. That will, of course, be there during the ceremony. And so, these medicines they have been in my everyday life all week. And I wanted to take a moment and share those with you because, again, in conversation, this is a part of my everyday life, and that I've had a few moments to share that with all of you and to share the names and how these are called in Anishinaabe Moan in the Ojibwe language. This is a delight for me, and I just wanted to take a moment and say, Pajigo Miigwech Bizendawi. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you. Again, I'm delighted every opportunity I have to to visit with you all, to chat for a few moments, and to discuss some of these words that aren't just fascinating to me, but they're a very important part of my life. And so, mi'ie wa kiroyan. That's all I'll say this afternoon. Miigwech bizendawik. Thank you so much for listening. Dagasai and Guamazik. Please, all of you, do take care. Banamamino oda sabandamangigo bandamin. And the spirit shall decide when we see each other again. Miigwech.